I knew that by doing this discography review that I was going to eat my words at times. I realized that going in, realized that the whole entire endeavor was really me eating my words in a way, considering 4 years ago most of my words were not exactly kind ones, and now all of a sudden I'm attempting to do that. However, I have to eat my words whenever it comes to Volume 3, the Subliminal Verses by Slipknot. The first two records, one of the main things that I stated in those videos was the fact that I felt like there was a little bit of a variation, there was a little bit of creativity that was out there, it was a little bit of diversity, but maybe not exactly enough, something where they kind of stuck to some of the same ideas a little bit too often and kind of returned to them, almost as though they were a nice little safety net. But then whenever you get to Volume 3, the Subliminal Verses, you realize that after the hiatus that they had taken and all the other projects that they had either, relaunched or launched for the very first time, the band came back and, focused on making a Slipknot record, but you definitely felt that personality from each of those different projects and from previous Slipknot records kind of bleed through. And the result is actually an album that, well, the diversity kind of kills it. Yeah, there I go eating my words. Maybe I'll try to explain it a little bit and kind of see if we can reach some sort of mutual understanding or truth about it. In the 3 years that passed between Iowa and Volume 3, the Subliminal Verses, there were a number of different bands that were launched, such as Murder Dolls or To My Surprise. And then, of course, Corey Taylor relaunched his Stone Sour project, and so that happened. All of that happened. Crazy stuff happened. So whenever they returned to focus on a Slipknot record, they decided to sit down not with Ross Robinson, but instead with Rick Rubin. Now, Rubin does have the ability to really bring out the most out of a band and kind of diversify them a good bit. If you consider what Rick Rubin was able to do with Metallica with the release of Death Magnetic after their last couple of records had been kind of lacking something, Rubin was able to bring out some of those older factors of the band in order to make something that was a little bit more true to what the band wanted, or true to what the fans wanted, as well as the band, but also just make it bigger. Rubin here definitely seemed to be akin to the idea that Slipknot really wanted to explore a lot of different things. They wanted to explore some songs that started off with acoustic guitar. They wanted to almost explore some poppy structures in some ways, at least as poppy as Slipknot gets. Whenever you consider the single off of this album, whenever you consider Duality, it's about one of the most natural and kind of typical Slipknot songs that you hear, only it's one that instead starts with that Stone Sour Corey Taylor voice, is the best way that I can really describe it, before it launches into the Slipknotisms that we really have come to know and realize. This is an album that's kind of also considered unique by a lot of different people, and is unique in the fact that it lacks profanity. A Slipknot album not bearing a parental advisory sticker seems to stick out like a sore thumb simply because it doesn't seem possible. It doesn't seem as though it's something that could ever happen. But they proved that they could do it. Corey Taylor actually stated the reason why he did it, the reason why he attempted in his lyric writing to contain zero profanity. I think he slipped up twice. Was because there were many harsh criticisms of him saying that he relied on it. And upon listening to the first two records, the thought did cross my mind. It definitely seemed as though it was being, these are words that were being said just for the sake of it. But then whenever you consider context, you start to realize it kind of makes sense. It kind of proves the point. It wouldn't be until years later with Five Finger Death Punch's The Wrong Side of Heaven and The Left Side of Hell that, the right side of hell, not the left side. Damn directions. That you would really see the great example of it being used just for the hell of it. Or Die Motherfucker, Die by Dope, but that song's hard to hate. This album, at times feels like it just drags. It really does. It feels like it just kind of goes on and on. I mean, some of the music that's within it is pretty good, in fact. And whenever they want to be hard and heavy, there are times where this almost feels like Slipknot attempted to write 2004's version of Rain and Blood by Slayer, at least musically. The vocal style obviously doesn't fully match up. However, the raw intensity and kind of the insanity that kind of comes along with it seems to try to seep its way in a little bit, though it's not something that really gets very far into the door. During its softer moments, it's actually kind of a unique take. It's in fact something that feels a little bit out of character. Whenever it comes to diversity, you kind of expected maybe a little bit more of the industrial side, a little bit more of that depraved side. Either that or maybe just exploring some different tempo stuff, but instead they just went full out acoustic and actually wrote a song that could consider to be, the slower moment of a prog album. No, it's not progressive by any stretch of the imagination. It's just the best comparison I could really use. You have those albums where, a progressive band is going on opus after opus for 3 or 4 tracks, and then all of a sudden for track 5, it's this simple acoustic or maybe acoustic/electric little song that doesn't exactly musically go very far and doesn't really have to in order to be really powerful and poignant. That's kind of what happens here. We also on this album got the Vermilion cycle, the 1 and 2 part series there, as well as the Pulse of the Maggots. Now, of course, the Maggots were what the Slipknot fans have called themselves ever since their inception and things like that. So this definitely feels like it has a little bit of a personal, a little more of a reflective vibe to it. It's definitely a neat little indicator right there. All in all, this album, it's gotten praise, and it's definitely been one where many people have praised the fact that they've kind of gone outside their comfort zone a little bit, and they've done a lot of things that didn't exactly feel really traditional to what they'd done in the first 2 albums. It really showed a lot of growth. It showed the willingness to experiment in things of that variety. However, whenever you compare them to the first 2 records, this album feels like it falls flat in some locations. It feels as though it tries to do a little too much. It was an ambitious project, one where the many sides of Slipknot easily could have come together and should have, in theory, produced the most widely diverse and incredible musical experience possible for the nu metal genre, considering all the different things that they had done in the 3 years that they had been on hiatus. Instead, this just feels a bit... It feels a bit out of character, it feels a bit out of left field, and it feels also a bit overdrawn, a bit overdone. Almost as though they tried to do just a bit too much, and it kind of overextends itself, and it kind of doesn't exactly reward a listener very often. Now, of course, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to disagree with that opinion. There's going to be a lot of you that love either everything that they do, or just, in general, thoroughly enjoy this record. And this is actually one, unlike the first 2, where I would like to hear your opinion based around that. What exactly makes you so attached to this record? Something beyond the fact that it was the first one that you got. That if that's your reason, then I can get that too. There's plenty of albums that I like that are conventionally not exactly loved, simply because it was my first purchase and my first experience with the band. So that explanation actually makes a whole lot of sense. But by comparison, even though it was probably, and is definitely, the most diverse record that Slipknot put out to date, to the 2004 date, it's also the one that I felt was really the weakest. It's the one where, at this point in time, the luster, the interest, the new car smell had kind of worn off a little bit, and at this point in time, some of the old tricks just felt like the same old tricks, and the new ones just kind of felt out of character, out of sorts. Overall, they did their best, and overall, they delivered an album that fans were definitely, going to be accepting of. And overall, they released another smash record that went on to sell 1 million units. So, what the hell do I know? But this would also lead to another hiatus, their second one. And unlike the first hiatus, which lasted 3 years, this one would last 4. And in 2008, we would get the next Slipknot record. We would get the 4th album of the Slipknot discography. Now, we saw what happened after 3 years' worth of hiatus, relaunching of projects. Now, what was going to happen after 4 years? What was going to happen also after one of those projects, by arguably the most well-known member, or at least one of them, ends up really taking off? Is that something that's going to affect their sound even further? Something where they're going to go kind of even further down the spiral? Or one that's actually going to bring them back with some renewed vigor? Come back. We'll talk about it. We'll find out. We're rapidly getting closer and closer to talking about album number 5. Stick around. We're going to get there.